Well, hello everybody. Danny and Wanda back from Pecan Grove. Guys, we've gotten a lot of emails and different things, comments and all about the furnace. About the dimensions of the furnace, because people watched the video and it worked very well, and they're wanting to know all about the dimensions of it. The concrete pad that Chris and I poured is 40 inches wide by 80 inches long, was the original concrete pad that we had poured. I had figured all that in. And then the evaporator pan that I bought was from Vego, was 24 inches by 4 foot. It's this pan right here. You can see on the bottom of it here, it's 24 inches that way. It is 4 foot that way. Now, in order for the pan to set down on the gasket like I needed it to, like right here, I wanted the 24 to be out to the outside edges of that gasket right there. So I got Mr. Tim to build me out of this plated steel here. He took some angle iron and he welded an angle iron square, a rectangle I guess you would say, 24 inches to the outside edges with the angles pointed inward. Now this plate steel you see here is actually welded along the edge of the angle iron. The reason for that is we wanted this plate steel here to set on top of the blocks that I laid. I laid 4-inch block work in here, and I'll give you the dimensions on the 4-inch block work here. 30 inches on the 4-inch block work, and the block work goes all the way through the whole thing. It goes around all of it back there. So the block work actually works out to be 30 inches wide at this part right here. Now, once he built this frame for me, we set it down on top of the blocks that I had here in a bed of mortar. I have a slight, when I say slight, I'm talking about 3/16 to 1/8 to 3/16 inch of a drop coming back in this direction right here, just so that you know, there's a downhill motion on the syrup. Now, you don't have to have that, because we have since learned, after doing it this particular time that we did it, that we now have poles to go across it, and when the syrup is done, we just pick the pan up, we're going to bring it over here and set it on a set of sawhorses, so there'll be no need for the drop. You can do it perfectly level. I think that would be wiser. Now, Mr. Tim made me a door for the front of it here. He actually thought we was doing this for the smokehouse, but it turned out to be a better sized door for this one. And all it is I think it was 2-inch angle that we bought. Yes, 2-inch angle iron. Mr. Tim welded up a square out of it, and then he came back and he put some door hinges on it here with a piece of all thread through it, and just kind of welded a bolt there. You know, he built the lock system on it. So what I did to fasten it was, as I was laying the bricks, I had pre-drilled holes in it, like right here. There should be some down here, and 2 of them in the top right here, another one right here, and another one right here. And I took some concrete screws, the big long blue concrete screws with 1/4 or 5/16 inch heads, and I ran them into the mortar joints of the bricks through here as I laid the bricks, so that the mortar would cure around them. And they, in other words, it's like they were set in it rather than having to be screwed into it. The bottom of the firebox is 6 inches from the concrete pad. What I did was I laid a whole section of just bricks in here, then I filled it full of cement on top of that, up 6 inches deep from the concrete slab. That gave us a 6-inch height raise in this off of the concrete slab that's below it. Now, what I did was, my firebox in here was already the 2 foot wide because it comes all the way out to here on it, remember. And then it came all the way back into here. Well, I wanted it to only be, I'll give you the exact measurements on it. 20, roughly, well, it was roughly 2 foot. Okay, it was 2 foot by 2 foot is what I made the original fire block out of blocks and bricks. I made that. Then I came back and I bought these off of Amazon. These were, if I get it right now, they were 1.5 by thick, 1.5 thick, 4.5 inches wide. I think it was 9 inches long was what they originally were. Yes, they're 9 inches long. And I kind of figured out that they would fit in here, how they would fit, without having to do a lot of cutting on these right here. And I had to cut these up in here to make all them fit. Now I did lay, once I laid these two up right here, I laid a piece of 2-inch angle iron, or 1.5 angle iron up underneath this in here to hold these bricks right here on. They're sitting on it. I could have went with a 2-inch piece of angle iron. I didn't realize it, but I could have used 2 inches instead of 1.5 inches. I just had 1.5 inches on hand. That's why I used it. 2 inch would have been better to build the lintel out of to go across here. And then I took my dry cutting tile saw or brick saw, whatever you want to call it, and I cut all these bricks up in here down to fit. Then when I got that done, the throat here has a 312 pitch, which is about 15 degrees from the original firebox here before I laid the bricks. From here up is about a 15 degree or 312 pitch up to the back of this up in here. I figured that would be a good enough throat to pull the heat up under here, because that's standard on most of your syrup pans. That's standard, is about a 312 or a 15 degree pitch. And if y'all watched in the video when I had the blocks laid on both sides here, I filled all this full of red clay gravel all up in here so I didn't have to have so many bricks. And then when I got it to a certain point, I poured about 4 inches or better of cement on all this up in here. I didn't put no bricks on this. It's just solid cement. The bricks were laid right across right here. This was that back wall was bricks, and then I stuck the fire brick on the front of it here. Now I will tell you, if I had it to do all over again, and I will probably go back and do some patchwork with it, I would use refractory cement rather than mortar, because I just used regular mortar in these joints, and I have had some crack spots in it here where it's trying to come out. I will go back and scrape all that out and buy me a tub of refractory cement, and I will try to patch this with the refractory cement. Now what I did here, these are fire bricks just like this, is laid all the way up through, all the way to this end up here. I just would stick them up, get my measurements, and cut them with the saw until I had them all stacked in place, and then I mortared them all in, did the same exact thing.
It's just smutted over.
Yeah, it's just smutted over right now, but I did the same exact thing over there. Okay, this was a piece of 6-inch stainless steel pipe that we got to go in here. Now this stainless steel pipe, if you look in the video, you'll see I cut the pipe, like a section out of it, or I had Chris cut it out about 8 inches halfway around the pipe. We cut just a section of the pipe out, and we sunk it down into here to the original base. And then I put a bunch of old broke up bricks and stuff like that in there, and I just kept filling in around it until I got it up to where the hole that I cut in the pipe was 3 inches lower than the highest point of the throat as we came up. In other words, you got to create a smoke shelf. You come up, so like this, you come up, and then it has to drop back down. So as we come up, we drop down, let's just say 2 to 3 inches, we drop down. And then I angled from where the widest part of the firebox was, I wired it back in to that hole in that pipe so that all the heat has to come up and run into that one hole in the pipe going out the top. Now, Mr. Tim built a spark arrestor for us to put on the top of it here. which worked out really good. Occasionally, the only problem we seen out of it was that the screen was a little bit fine for what we needed. We need a screen that has a little bit bigger mesh in it, a little bit bigger holes, because we kept having to tap it with the wrench to knock any soot out of it or anything. This line right here, we laid them up level with one another until we got up to this. This is the level of the whole furnace all the way around. And from here up, I went an additional 21.5 inches. And with each layer of bricks, I stepped them in about 1 inch coming up. All the way, I would step them in between 3/4 to an inch, somewhere in between that. And then when I got to the top up here, we just have tons of old bricks on the place here. These old bricks didn't have any holes in them. These are just old solid bricks, and they're very porous, but they're old brick. And I capped off the ones with the holes in them with the ones like this. And then I mounded the cement up, you know, not much, maybe a 1/2 inch to 3/4 of an inch up, so that when rain hits it, it will run off. Hindsight, these bricks are very porous, and when it rains, these bricks hold a lot of water. As you can see, the difference in the color of the mortar here, you can see how it's still wet right here, wet here. It's starting to dry out now from the top down, but we had 3 days of solid rain, and it just infiltrated all these bricks down in here. The only thing that would bother me in that is if we had if it got down in the teens or something like that, that it would crack the mortar or something, because the water in it would freeze. But other than that, guys, that is basically that's basically it. These bricks that we use here are the same ones we capped off with around here on this. We had holes in these. We had a 1.5 inch gap between these bricks and the blocks in there was an 1.5 inch gap. I filled that with pure sand all the way around this thing as an insulator to keep the heat from the fire bricks from coming out here doing any more damage than it had to, but it still cracked it a little bit right here. Got a little bit of a crack, but that's understandable. You're going to have that when you start dealing with bricks. You got expansions and contractions, you know, with heat and cold. Then we bought this 2-inch rail gasket, and the 2-inch rail gasket lays right on top of, I'll show you right here, it lays right on top of the 2-inch angle iron to seal the pan off so that, you know, your smoke and your fire don't come out underneath the pan here. So, and then I bought this grating system here at a little hardware store to put in it to set my wood up on to kind of burn. You don't have to have that. It's just something I found. I thought it was kind of cute, so I thought I'd put it in there. But other than that, that is the whole system, guys. There's not much more to it. You'll see right here. I'll show you, because I know I'll get this question. From that point right there where the bricks stop to right here is exactly 4 foot, which is exactly the length of the pan. So we have from outside the rail gasket to outside the rail gasket is 2 foot. Outside to outside here is 4 foot. All your angle iron that was turned to the inside. No angle iron was turned to the outside. It was all welded facing inward, so that the fire brick would go up underneath the angle iron, so that the fire, when it came up, would not hit it would hit nothing but the bottom of the pan. Now about 2 inches all the way around the bottom of the pan, and you can see it right over here. This is where the gasket was sitting at, right here. None of the fire coming up hit this part of the pan right here. You can see how clean it is all the way around. That was the gasket. The fire only hit this part in here, so that we didn't have any heat getting over into the corners of our pan here, causing any kind of warpage or any kind of heating up in the corners or anything like that, trying to scorch or burn in the corners or anything like that. This worked out really, really well to set it up, this type of system. Okay, I want to show you guys a little bit about what happened here. The way this thing is set up and designed is that this long bar here swivels over yonder. we loosen a nut up right here. As we loosen this nut up, it lets this channel iron here moves forward. We put the chain on the sprocket right here, and then as we tighten this nut down, it pulls the chain tight. Well, we since realized that this was turning too fast. This gear is too small in diameter. This gear right here, I believe, was a 11-inch. No, actually, yes, no, it was a 10-inch. A 10.5-inch gear. They probably call it 11-inch. Well, from going from this small one right here to this 10 and 11-inch gear right here, it did break down the PTO on the tractor speed tremendously, but it still was not enough, and it was shooting the cane through the mill pretty quick. And when a big stalk of cane would go in, it would put such a bind on this that it would actually pull the whole building over, and the chain would get really tight on one side and get really loose on the other side. Well, right when we got to the end of grinding, matter of fact, it was the very last stalk running through it, I was in a hurry, and I shoved it through too fast, and the chain jumped off, and it broke the link that was in it right there. So, what I have done, I've already purchased a brand new gear. I purchased one that's 20 inches in diameter to go out here. It's going to go. We're going to take all this off and redo it. It's going to be a bigger gear coming out here. We'll rebuild a system like this, and that is going to slow this mill down tremendously by doing that. And the cane won't be just shooting through it rapidly like y'all saw in the video. The cane will be going through the video at a much slower rate, which means that I can now brace this off back to the post down here, and we should alleviate that problem that we was having. Now, these posts never moved. These posts were solid as they could be, and we're going to probably set a couple more right out here, and we'll fasten this to those two posts, and then those two posts will be fastened to these posts, which will make it all one rigid unit. And then with a simple fact, we'll have a higher torque. This will be less RPM, and I think the cane mill will work even more efficiently than it ever has. Okay, guys, that's where we're at with our facility here now. All of our cane's been planted, with the exception I have a little bit left to go in the shop out here. I think I'm going to plant it down at the food plot just to see how it does down in the swamp down there. As we make the revisions on the cane mill, I probably will do a video and show you the revisions. I probably will hook the tractor back up to it and just do some testing with it just to be sure that everything's going to work like I think it's going to work. I would like to say thank you to Tim, and there's a whole host of other people behind the scenes that I'm not going to mention names. Tim and Chris particularly, I can mention their names, but there's others behind the scene that I don't have permission to say anything about them. But they did some of the machine work and different things in here that needed to be done. Like this, building this stainless steel piece out here and all. I'm very appreciative to these guys. They built all these pieces up here for me. I just want to say thank you to everybody that was involved in this setup. Looking forward to next year. Next year, hopefully, we won't only be cooking my sugar cane next year, but hopefully we'll be doing Chris's, and we'll be doing Mr. Tim's, and we'll have instead of maybe just having one day of fellowship, maybe we'll have like 3 days of fellowship, and we'll be able to have Miss Cynthia back down again, maybe this time Mr. Dexter can come with her, and we'll all be able to just sit around here. Maybe Jennifer can come that day with Chris. Maybe we can just all have one big fellowship here and enjoy our time in the Lord. Thank you guys from Pecan Grove.